They stole my property, fined me for my own land, and when I exposed their corruption, they tried to destroy me. But they had no idea I was their new government auditor, and I had the power to take them all down. This is how I turned the tables and made them pay. Asterisk. The rhythmic bounce of the tennis ball against the court echoed through the still morning air, followed by the crisp thwack of my racket. This court, my court, was my pride and joy, an extension of my passion for the game. I had poured my own money into building it, selecting the best surface material, ensuring the nets were professional grade, and even hiring a landscaper to make the surrounding area aesthetically perfect. It was more than just a sports facility. It was my sanctuary. No HOA fees had funded this. No community meetings had debated over its construction. It stood on my private property, fully paid for with my own hard-earned money. So, when I stepped outside one morning and saw strangers playing a doubles match as if they owned the place, my first reaction was confusion. I blinked. Had I accidentally left the gate open? Maybe they had wandered in by mistake. Then I heard it. Yeah, the HOA said it's open for all members now. One of them remarked, adjusting his grip on his racket. I frowned. HOA? Open for all members? What the hell were they talking about? I cleared my throat. Excuse me, but what are you doing on my court? One of the players turned to me with an easy smile. Oh, hey, we just found out this was added to the community's shared amenities. Really great of you to make this available for everyone. My blood ran cold. Available for everyone? I never agreed to that. I was about to set the record straight, but something told me to take a step back. I needed to find out exactly what was going on before confronting them. With one last glance at the uninvited guests enjoying my property, I turned and walked back inside, my mind already racing. I sat at my desk, flipping through the HOA documents I had from when I first bought my house. Nowhere in the agreement did it state that privately owned properties were subject to the HOA's control. My house, my land, my tennis court, none of it fell under their jurisdiction. Still, something wasn't adding up. I decided to do a little more digging and headed to the HOA's website. Scrolling through the latest community updates, I found it. New community access. Tennis court now open to residents. Beneath the bold, cheerful heading was a brief note. Thanks to a generous contribution, all HOA members now have access to a private tennis court within the neighborhood. Please be respectful and follow posted guidelines when using this new amenity. Generous contribution? I clenched my jaw. I hadn't contributed a damn thing. Grabbing my phone, I dialed the HOA office. The line rang twice before a chirpy voice answered. Hello, this is the Willow Creek HOA office. How can I help you today? I took a breath. Yeah, this is my name. I just saw a notice about a tennis court being open for community access. That court happens to be my property. So I'd love an explanation as to why it's being advertised as part of the HOA's amenities. There was a pause. Then, in a voice much less chirpy, the woman replied, Oh, you have to speak with our HOA president about that. Would you like me to transfer you? I exhaled slowly. Yes, please. There was a click, then a brief hold, before another voice came on the line. This one smoother, more authoritative, and laced with the kind of arrogance that made my skin crawl. This is Mrs. Landry, HOA president. How can I help you? I didn't bother with pleasantries. Mrs. Landry, I just saw an announcement about my private tennis court being open to HOA members. I wasn't informed about this decision, and I never approved it. Care to explain? There was a small chuckle on the other end. Oh, Mr. Last name, I understand your concerns. But as a resident of this community, surely you recognize the importance of shared resources? It's only fair that all members benefit from available amenities. My grip tightened on the phone. It's not an available amenity. It's my personal property. You have no right to grant access to it. A pause. Then, with sickly sweetness, she said, I understand this might be an adjustment for you, but think of how wonderful it is for the neighborhood. More people staying active, a stronger sense of community. Surely you wouldn't want to be the only one refusing to contribute. I was seething. Consider this my official notice. Remove that announcement immediately or I will take legal action. Her tone darkened. That won't be necessary. We'll revisit the matter. Something in her voice told me this wasn't over. The next day, I found even more people on my court. Word had spread. Teenagers were casually rallying on one side, while a group of older men debated match scores on the other. My property had become the neighborhood's new hotspot overnight. I stormed up to one of the players. "Who told you this was open for public use?" He looked at me, confused. The HOA? It's in the newsletter." The HOA had doubled down. Fury boiled in my veins. They were trying to gaslight me, pretend like this was always part of the arrangement, like I was the crazy one for objecting. I took a deep breath, then turned around and walked back inside. That evening, I had locks installed on the court's entrance. Heavy-duty, tamper-proof locks. I also put up clear signs. Private property. No trespassing. To ensure things were airtight, I had a lawyer draft a cease and desist letter addressed directly to HOA. The next morning, I received an email from Mrs. Landry. "Mr. Last Name, your recent actions have been noted. We encourage all residents to embrace a spirit of cooperation. We will be discussing this issue at the next HOA meeting. Attendance is mandatory." Mandatory? Not for me, it wasn't, but I would be attending, just not in the way they expected. That evening, as I reviewed my legal options, fate decided to play a hand of its own. A new work assignment landed on my desk. As I skimmed the paperwork, my lips curled into a slow, satisfied smile. I was a government auditor. And guess whose financial records I had just been assigned to review? The very same HOA that had been trying to steal my court. This was about to get interesting. If they wanted a fight, they were going to get one. The morning after receiving the email from Mrs. Landry, I decided it was time to take action. The locks had been installed. The signs were clear, and my lawyer had already prepared a cease and desist letter. But the HOA wasn't backing down. It started subtly. That same day, I noticed my trash hadn't been picked up. My neighbors' bins were empty, but mine sat untouched, reeking under the sun. Then, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Notice of violation. Failure to maintain a community amenity. I scoffed. Community amenity? They were really trying to pretend my private tennis court was HOA property? That evening, I checked my security cameras. At exactly 10:32 p.m., two men in HOA-branded polo shirts had attempted to open the court gate. When they found it locked, one of them pulled out a keychain, flipping through different keys, testing each one. My jaw tightened. They were trying to break into my court. The only problem for them? I had never given them a key. The next morning, I printed out high-resolution photos from the security footage and sent them directly to the HOA office. My email was brief. Attempted trespassing on private property is a crime. Cease all activity regarding my tennis court immediately, or I will escalate this matter to law enforcement. I waited for a response. Nothing, but I knew this wasn't over. 2 days later, I was pulling weeds from my garden when my neighbor, a woman in her mid-50s, stopped by. She held a copy of the HOA's latest newsletter in her hands. "You might want to see this," she said, frowning. I wiped my hands on my jeans and took the paper. Selfishness in the community. A closer look at division and greed. The article was obviously about me. It never used my name, but the wording was clear. Certain individuals in our neighborhood have refused to contribute to the greater good, hoarding resources that could benefit everyone. While most of our residents support fairness, some still insist on prioritizing personal gain over community well-being. Beneath the article was a photo of my tennis court. "They're trying to make you the villain," my neighbor muttered. I clenched my jaw. Let them try. The next few days were filled with whispers. When I walked my dog, I caught people glancing at me before quickly looking away. The HOA had turned my neighbors against me, painting me as some greedy, selfish homeowner who refused to share. But I wasn't about to back down. That evening, I posted my own message on the community forum. "Dear neighbors, many of you may have seen the HOA's latest newsletter. Let me clarify a few things. My tennis court was built on my private property. The HOA had no involvement in its construction, no claim over its use, and no right to open it to the public. Any suggestion otherwise is false. If you were misled into believing it was an HOA amenity, you should ask the board why they've been lying to you. It didn't take long for the post to gain traction. A few brave neighbors chimed in. Wait, the HOA didn't pay for court? I thought this was a community facility. That's what they told us. The cracks were forming, but I knew the HOA wouldn't go down without a fight. The next morning, I found another notice taped to my front door. Notice of noncompliance. $500 fine. I snatched the paper off the door, scanning it. Failure to comply with HOA guidelines regarding communal space usage will result in progressive fines. Failure to pay will lead to further disciplinary action. Disciplinary action? What was this? A high school detention. I wasn't about to let them intimidate me. I called my lawyer. Can they legally fine me over property they don't own? He laughed. No, but they're trying to bully you. You have two choices. Pay the fine, which you shouldn't, or ignore it and prepare for them to escalate. I tossed the notice onto my desk. Let them escalate. That evening, I sent an email to the HOA board. I will not be paying this fine, as it is completely baseless. If you attempt to take legal action against me, you will be met with a counter lawsuit for harassment and fraud. Consider this my final warning. No response. Instead, 2 days later, I received a letter stating that my lawn was non-compliant with HOA landscaping guidelines and that I had 7 days to rectify the issue before another fine was issued. They were looking for any excuse to make my life miserable. Too bad for them. I was just getting started. As the battle with the HOA raged on, life threw me an unexpected card. It came in the form of a brown government envelope. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee as I opened it. It was my next case assignment. As a government auditor, I reviewed financial records to ensure organizations, businesses, nonprofits, and yes, even homeowners associations were following regulations. I scanned the first page, and my heart nearly stopped. Audit subject, Willow Creek Homeowners Association. I read it again, slowly, to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Nope. The HOA that had been harassing me for weeks was now my responsibility to audit. I let out a slow, delighted chuckle. This was divine justice. I immediately started my review. The HOA was required to submit their financial statements, expenditure reports, and budget allocations. And within minutes of going through their records, I found something very interesting. They had been collecting special assessment fees from residents for the past 2 years. Supposedly, this money was meant for community improvements. Yet, there were no records of any actual projects completed. Where had the money gone? I had a feeling I already knew the answer. This was bigger than just a tennis court. The next day, I sent the official audit notice to the HOA board. Mrs. Landry, the HOA president, called me within 10 minutes. Her voice was tight. This must be some kind of mistake. It's not, I said calmly. Routine audit. Standard procedure. Silence. Then she let out a nervous chuckle. Well, I'm sure everything is in order. I guess we'll find out, I said, leaning back in my chair. The audit wasn't just about numbers. It was about power. The HOA had been flexing its authority over me, thinking I was just another homeowner they could bully. But now, the tables had turned, and I wasn't just fighting back. I was taking them down. Mrs. Landry had spent the last few weeks making my life miserable, but the moment she realized I was the one auditing the HOA's finances, her confidence wavered. For the first time, I had the upper hand. The next morning, as I was organizing my audit documents, I received an email from the HOA office. Dear Mr. Last name, we would like to extend an invitation to discuss the concerns regarding the tennis court and HOA compliance. Let's work together to find a solution that benefits everyone. I smirked. They were scrambling. I replied with one sentence. All concerns will be addressed in accordance with federal auditing regulations. I wasn't interested in discussions. I was interested in justice. That same day, I requested the HOA's detailed financial reports, bank statements, and expenditure logs. Legally, they were required to provide them within a specified time frame, and I had a feeling they weren't ready for what was coming. As I started reviewing the financial statements, The first red flag appeared almost immediately. The HOA had collected over $200,000 in special assessment fees from residents over the past 2 years. Where had that money gone? According to their reports, it had been allocated to various community improvement projects. But when I cross-referenced these expenses, something became clear. None of those projects actually existed. $50,000 for park renovations, except the park hadn't been touched in years. $30,000 for new streetlights, yet the same old, flickering lights still lined the roads. $25,000 for clubhouse maintenance. But according to several residents, the clubhouse had been locked and in use for months. The numbers weren't adding up. I needed proof. That night, I took a drive around the neighborhood, checking every so-called completed project on the HOA's list. Every single one was a lie. It was time to dig deeper. The next morning, I visited the county records office and requested building permits for all recent HOA-approved projects. If they had spent money on improvements, there had to be permits, contracts, and records filed. I waited as the clerk typed into her system. Then she frowned. "Are you sure these projects happened?" she asked. I played dumb. "Why do you ask?" "Because there are no permits filed under the HOA's name in the past 3 years. My pulse quickened. 3 years? That meant the HOA had been collecting fees and lie about every single project. But where was the money going? As I left the office, I had a sinking feeling that I already knew the answer. Someone was pocketing it, and I was about to find out who. I spent the next few days combing through the HOA's financial records. Every major project was linked to a single contractor, one I had never heard of before. The company was called Clearview Property Solutions. I Googled it. Nothing. No website. No reviews. No registered business license. That's when I noticed something chilling. Every payment to Clearview Property Solutions had been personally signed off by Mrs. Landry. I dug deeper, searching business records. And then I found it. Clearview Property Solutions was registered under Mrs. Landry's maiden name. I sat back in my chair, exhaling sharply. The HOA president had created a fake company and had been funneling HOA funds into her own pockets. I finally had her. Armed with proof, I prepared my official report. I documented everything, every fake expense, every missing permit, every misused dollar. But I wasn't going to submit it just yet. I wanted to see how far they'd go to cover their tracks. That evening, I took a walk to the neighborhood. The whispers had changed. "Did you hear? The HOA is under investigation. I heard there's missing money." I knew something was off about Mrs. Landry. The tide was turning. Then, right before I reached my house, a black SUV pulled up beside me. The tinted window rolled down, revealing Mrs. Landry's cold, calculating stare. "Mr. Last name," she said smoothly. "We need to talk." I smirked. "I think we're past that point." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Let's be reasonable." "Reasonable?" I laughed. "You mean like how you reasonably stole thousands of dollars from the community?" Her face darkened. "You don't understand what you're getting yourself into," she said. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "No, Mrs. Landry, you don't understand what you've gotten yourself into." She clenched her jaw. "We'll see about that." And with that, she rolled up her window and drove away. The final battle had begun. Mrs. Landry's veiled threat lingered in my mind long after she drove away. She knew I had evidence, and she knew I wasn't backing down. That night, I backed up all my findings to multiple secure locations. I sent a copy to my lawyer, another to my trusted friend, and even had a printed copy in a lock safe at home. Because if there was one thing I knew, it was that desperate people do desperate things. And I was right. The very next morning, I received a new notice from the HOA. Immediate eviction notice. Violations against HOA Code of Conduct. I almost laughed. They were trying to kick me out of my own house. But this wasn't just a scare tactic. As I skimmed the letter, I realized they had filed a legal complaint against me, claiming I was in violation of neighborhood regulations. Their reasoning? Disruptive behavior within the community, failure to comply with HOA rules regarding private property use, defamation of HOA board members. This wasn't just absurd, it was pure retaliation. They were hoping to bury me in legal fees, forcing me to back off. Too bad for them. I was already 10 steps ahead. Instead of panicking, I did something unexpected. I walked straight into the HOA office, documents in hand. The receptionist's eyes widened when she saw me. Mr. Last name. I'd like to speak to Mrs. Landry, I said, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Murmurs rippled through the office. A few moments later, Mrs. Landry stepped out, her face carefully neutral. What a surprise, she said, feigning warmth. I smiled. Yes, isn't it? I dropped a thick folder onto the counter. This is my response to your ridiculous eviction notice. And while we're at it, let's talk about your financial mismanagement. Her eyes flickered with panic. I leaned in, lowering my voice so only she could hear. You've been stealing from this community for years. I have the proof. And if you think you can intimidate me into silence, you're dead wrong. She swallowed hard. For the first time, she didn't have a response. I turned to leave, but paused at the door. By the way, I added over my shoulder, I've already sent everything to my lawyer. So if anything happens to me or my property, let's just say authorities will know exactly where to look. Her face drained of color. Checkmate. The very next morning, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Hello? A hesitant voice answered. I heard you're looking into the HOA's finances. I sat up straighter. Who is this? Just a concerned homeowner. The person said quickly. Listen, I have information, but I can't meet you in public. I narrowed my eyes. Why not? A pause. Then, because I used to work for them, and I know where the missing money went. My pulse quickened. Where do we meet? Tonight, parking lot behind the old grocery store. Midnight. The call disconnected. This was it. Someone on the inside was ready to talk. But a small voice in the back of my mind whispered, Is this a setup? At exactly 11:55 p.m., I pulled into the dark parking lot. The old grocery store had been abandoned for years, its windows boarded up. The only light came from a single flickering street lamp. I kept my car running, one hand resting near my glove compartment, where I kept a small, legally owned handgun, just in case. Then, a shadowy figure emerged from behind a dumpster. A woman late 40s, her hair tied in a messy bun. She glanced around nervously before approaching my car. You came alone? She asked. I nodded. What do you know? She exhaled sharply. I used to be the HOA's financial assistant. I left last year when I realized what they were doing. I leaned forward. And what were they doing? She swallowed hard. Landry and a few others. They created fake companies to funnel HOA funds into personal accounts. But that's not even the worst part. I frowned. There's more. She hesitated. You ever wonder why Landry is so obsessed with your tennis court? That caught me off guard. What do you mean? She pulled out a USB drive. The answer is on here. You need to see it for yourself. I took the drive, my mind racing. What the hell had I just uncovered? Back home, I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. Inside was a folder labeled Internal Confidential. I opened it. The first document was a private email exchange between Mrs. Landry and another board member. I started reading, and my blood ran cold. Once we officially acquire the tennis court, we'll have access to the backlit. That land is worth a fortune. Investors are ready to develop luxury townhomes, but we need full control first. I inhaled sharply. They hadn't just been trying to use my court for fun. They wanted my land. I kept reading. If my last name refuses to comply, we'll push for foreclosure. The board is already on board with fabricated violations. He'll either sell or we'll make him. My hands clenched into fists. This was never about HOA rules. It was about money and power. They had been planning this for months, maybe even years, and I was the last obstacle standing in their way. I closed my laptop, my heart pounding. This wasn't just about fighting back anymore. It was about destroying them. I sat in front of my laptop, staring at the damning emails that confirmed everything: the HOA's corruption, their fake companies, and their plan to steal my land. They thought they had me cornered. They had no idea what was coming. I picked up my phone and dialed my lawyer. "Did you get the documents I sent?" I asked the moment he answered. There was a pause, then a low whistle. "Yeah, and if even half of this is real, the HOA is finished." "Oh, it's real," I said grimly. "All right," he said. "We go for the nuclear option. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. This isn't just an internal HOA dispute anymore. This is criminal." I nodded, feeling a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. Let's burn them to the ground. The next step was getting proof that Mrs. Landry and the HOA board knew what they were doing was illegal. I needed them to admit it. And for that, I needed bait. I sent an email to the HOA under an alias, posing as a potential investor interested in the so-called backlit development. I made it sound convincing, an eager buyer willing to move quickly, with inside connection to fast-track zoning approvals. Less than an hour later, Mrs. Landry replied, "Let's meet. We have ways to make the transition smooth. Discretion is key." I smirked. She had no idea I was recording everything. The next day, I walked into the meeting room at the HOA office, a hidden microphone clipped inside my jacket. Mrs. Landry was already there, along with 2 other board members. They greeted me with fake smiles, clearly eager to seal their shady deal. "So," I said, playing the role of a greedy investor, "how do we get around the fact that the land is still under private ownership?" Mrs. Landry waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, that won't be a problem for long. We have control over the HOA's legal processes. We'll push enough violations, and eventually he'll either be forced to sell or we'll foreclose on the property." My heart pounded, but I kept my face neutral. "And if he fights back?" She smirked. "We have other ways of handling resistance." "Gotcha." I ended the meeting quickly, thanking them for their time. The moment I left the building, I sent the recording to my lawyer. The walls were closing in on them now. It didn't take long for the dominoes to fall. With the evidence we had, fraudulent financials, fake businesses, secret land deals, and now a recorded confession. My lawyer wasted no time filing formal complaints with the state's attorney general, the Department of Housing, and even the IRS. Then we took it one step further. We leaked the story. I sent an anonymous tip to every local news station, complete with documents exposing the HOA's corruption. Within days, headlines exploded. HOA caught in massive fraud scandal. Residents outraged as HOA board accused of embezzlement. Investigation launched into HOA corruption. Authorities take action. Suddenly, the entire town knew what was happening, and the people were furious. A storm of backlash hit the HOA like a tidal wave. Residents stormed their offices, demanding answers. The local news camped outside their homes. Landry and her cronies tried to spin the story, but the evidence was overwhelming. Then came the real blow: law enforcement. 3 days after the news broke, I stood outside my house, watching as black SUVs rolled into the neighborhood. FBI agents and state investigators marched toward the HOA office with warrants in hand. Half an hour later, they walked out with Mrs. Landry in handcuffs. Her face was pale, her once confident demeanor shattered. The moment she saw me watching, her eyes burned with hatred. "You did this," she spat as they led her to the car. I folded my arms. "No, you did this to yourself." The rest of the board members weren't far behind. Within days, multiple arrests were made. Charges included fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement. The HOA was officially dissolved by the county. Every fraudulent fine they had issued, void. Every stolen dollar, ordered to be repaid. And my tennis court? Mine. Forever. With the HOA dismantled, the neighborhood underwent a massive shift. A new community council was formed, one that actually served the residents instead of exploiting them. I became a neighborhood hero overnight. People I had never spoken to before were shaking my hand, thanking me for exposing the corruption. And Mrs. Landry? She faced a prison sentence of up to 10 years. One evening, as I stood by my tennis court, a few neighbors walked over. "So, One of them said with a grin, "Since the criminals are gone, does this mean we can finally use the court?" I chuckled. "Sure, but this time I tossed him a racket. You'll have to ask first." He laughed. And just like that, things finally felt right. Justice had been served. And this time, no one would ever take what was mine again.